Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar on paid family leave in the Catholic Church. My name is Clayton Sinyai, and I'm Executive Director of the Catholic Labor Network. The Catholic Labor Network is a national association of Catholic trade unionists and Catholic clergy, religious, and lay social ministry activists committed to Catholic social teaching on labor and work. We are a national organization, but our Maryland chapter is officially sponsoring this event. I'd also like to thank the Catholic Campaign for Human Development for its support and our co-sponsors from Baltimore Catholic Charities. Now, our church often translates gospel values into commentary on public policy through documents like pastoral letters. In the bishop's 1986 pastoral letter on the economy, Economic Justice for All, they told us that the lack of a mutually supportive relation between family life and economic life is one of the most serious problems facing the United States today. Economic and social policies, as well as the organization of the work world, should be continually evaluated in light of their impact on the strength and stability of family life. Simply put, the church has always taught that the integrity of the family is primary, and that we need to structure our economy to support family life. The world tries to tell us that our jobs have to come first and that our families should accommodate them, but the world has it exactly backwards. According to our faith, God created the family and our human institutions should respect that. This principle is why we see the Catholic Church supporting paid family leave, which is under consideration this year in the Maryland State Legislature. The Maryland Catholic Conference is the institution charged with representing Maryland's Catholic Church in Annapolis. On the conference's website, you will find the Maryland Catholic Conference supports efforts that increase the dignity of a person's work, as well as expand opportunities to care for oneself and his or her family during times of critical need, from welcoming a new child into the family through caring for aging parents and every stage in between. Known as the Time to Care Act, efforts to expand access to paid family leave for Maryland workers would allow up to 12 weeks of paid time off from work to welcome a new baby, to provide care and comfort for family members with serious health conditions or disabilities, or to deal with a personal illness or injury. The conference believes that no person should have to make the impossible choice of whether to care for his or her family or lose a job. I think the Maryland Catholic Conference has summed up the church's position on this legislation admirably. Now I would like to introduce Delegate Chris Valderrama, sponsor of the Time to Care Act and a parishioner at St. Columba in Oxon Hill. She'll say a few words about why she authored this important legislation. Thank you, Delegate. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Clayton, and thank you, Regan, for the invitation to speak to all of you this afternoon. For those who don't know me, if we have not met, my name is Chris Valderrama. I represent in Prince George's County in District 26. It is my proud honor to be the lead sponsor on this bill. I want to thank those who precessed me, who were sponsors. As most of you know, big legislation such as this doesn't just move right on through, unfortunately, even though it's, in my opinion, common sense legislation. So I believe this might be the 7th year running with me at the forefront, and I believe 3 or 4 years with my co-sponsor, my cross-file Senator Antonio Hayes, who's just as passionate about this legislation as well. Clayton said I would share. He did a very good job of describing the bill already, and I'm sure it is not new to any of you here in this forum this afternoon. So instead of getting to the weeds of what the bill does, I just want to share a personal story of where I could have benefited from this legislation some time ago. My mother, who may she rest in peace, I was at a former employer, and Regan knows this story, so I'm going to get through this without speeding too fast because I get quite sentimental about it. But my former employer, I had used an extensive amount, if not all, of my leave. My paid leave, my sick leave, and my vacation leave. And just to reiterate, that was earned leave. I worked, I earned it, and I felt I could do what I want with it. In this particular case, it was to help assist my family in caring for my ailing mother. But unbeknownst to me, myself and other colleagues of mine were called in, if you will. We had new management in our place of employment, and we were basically questioned as to why, for myself, why I was using such an extensive amount of leave, only to break down and kind of go off on my boss explaining why. And if many of you know me, I'm a diligent hard worker and I don't waste time. I'm not a lazy employee. And so I was personally hurt by that, by alleged accusations, if you will. So, I mean, I don't think anyone should have to go through something like that, especially when it's your earned leave. I will say, we were at the cusp when this pandemic hit 2 years ago. Senator Hayes and I, we were really, as we do every year, have been working diligently to try and get some kind of agreement between the two chambers with this bill. And many of you know, it has been labeled that we, the sponsors or the legislation itself, is anti-business. And I'm here to say I am not an anti-business person. I don't proclaim to own a business. I don't have that background, but I am supportive of my local businesses in my community. And many of you here know we've had business owners and management support this legislation. So I know we had to come to a compromise, but for those who are on here who may say they know family or colleagues who say, why do we need this? Well, Clayton explained what it does. I will just say the one big argument I would get every now and then is, well, we have family and FMLA. We have a Family Medical Leave Act. Yes, we do. And that was groundbreaking legislation at the time. It was the early 90s. It was a great advance for employees. But I think what people don't understand or maybe have forgotten, while it does guarantee employees their job up to 12 weeks of protected leave, which I benefit from my prior employer, the rub is that it's not paid, right? So the essence of the Time to Care Act bill is to provide a partial wage replacement. And I emphasize partial because some folks may not benefit from this. They may have better benefits. They may never need to use it. But like every other insurance plan, because this will be similar along to our UI plan here in the state of Maryland, we get insurance. Why? To feel that benefit of security. God forbid we would need to use it. So really, like I said in the beginning, this is common sense legislation. It would establish a family medical insurance plan similar to our UI plan. It's not the same as paid sick leave. It provides a partial wage replacement with proper documentation by a medical professional. It's a self-funded plan. I could go on, but really, I know I was tasked to be here to show my support, and I want each and every one, I have overwhelming support for this legislation, whether I was the sponsor or not. I've been trying to do my diligence and sharing it among my constituency, and I hope that each and every one of you will do so, whether it's in your parish or in your HOA, your civic association. I can say the speaker, I can only speak for the speaker since I serve in the House, that she has said this is a priority of hers. I am not under the impression that because one says that it's a done deal. I think we all know how things move in the legislature, at least from experience, I do, and I don't take anything for granted. So I think we should not stop, at just saying, okay, well, I spread the word. I think we need to keep pushing. And for those who may not know, our public bill hearings, well, I say public, but they'll be virtual, will be February 15th. I believe that's when it was. It was supposed to be the 1st, but they moved it. And I'm not quite sure. I just looked at the docket for that day. It looks like it's Valderrama Day because it's not just Time to Care Act bill, it's some of my other bills. And I'm not quite sure where they put so many on one day, especially with this big bill, on that day. So with that said, I just encourage everyone here to please, if you can testify, please do. And if you cannot, submit something by email. I know there's mailers going around through the USPS. I received one telling me to tell my delegate Jay Walker to support it. I thought it was quite hilarious. Having said that, I just can't thank each and every more than enough, especially the Time to Care Coalition, the advocates, for pushing for such a great measure. It's not unprecedented. As you all know, it's already in DC and several other states. So no one can say it's not working. It's working. And if we could do that for our Marylanders, why wouldn't we? So with that said, I thank you very much for the invitation, and I hope we can get this moved this year.
Thank you so much, Delegate. We appreciate your efforts and appreciate your explanation. Now I would like to introduce Lisa Klingenmeyer of Baltimore Catholic Charities, our partner, who's going to explain what the Act does in a little bit more detail.
Thank you. And just again, wanted to extend our thanks to our sponsor, Delegate Valderrama. There's, legislation like this moves because people have stories that directly talk about why this legislation is needed. And Delegate Valderrama is such a champion on this issue, and just really wanted to thank her for being our sponsor on this legislation so that we can get this legislation done this year. So what we're going to do now is in just a second, I'm going to share my screen and we'll walk through just a couple of slides that go over the Time to Care Act, sort of some of the details about it, some opportunities to connect on the issue. But also want to let you know, after our presentation, we are going to hear from a staff member on the ground at Catholic Charities about what we're seeing in our programs around this issue. We're also going to have a speaker talk about labor, and then we'll leave you, like Delegate Valderrama said, some options for how to connect with us on the bill. And a thing that I learned early on doing advocacy work is it's always important to know who's in the room with you before you start talking. And so we'd just love if folks had an opportunity, if you could drop your name in the chat, what organization you're with, what parish you're with, sort of how you got connected, just so that as I'm talking about the bill, if I know it connects to either your program or sort of your community, I can make those connections for you. So just would love to know who's in the space with us today. So as you drop that information in the chat, I'm going to work towards sharing my screen with you all. All right. Hopefully everybody can see that. I will have time at the end to ask questions, but also if you have a burning question about a particular slide I'm on, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. It can be a little challenging to see the chat when I'm presenting. So if you want to unmute yourself to ask a question, that's just fine. So we are going to be talking about the Time to Care Act 2022. And just wanted to give you all, there we go, an overview of Catholic Charities of Baltimore. Why are we in this space with you today? Why is this an issue that we're working on as one of our priority issues? Catholic Charities of Baltimore, we are one of the largest Catholic charities in the country. We have over 80 programs across 300 sites in the Archdiocese of Baltimore. So all the way out to Western Maryland and sort of the Central Maryland part of our state. We do programming across a wide range of disciplines. So we work with children and family who are in behavioral health crises in our community clinics and in our residential programs, and other opportunities we have to connect to families who are struggling with behavioral health needs. We have Gallagher Services, which works with individuals with intellectual disabilities, everything from day programming to houses where folks with disabilities can live in community together, and a wide range of services. What we are probably most known for in Maryland is some of our poverty programs. So places like Our Daily Bread, our shelters in Baltimore City, and Arundel County and Carroll County, but we also, Harford County, but we also run Head Starts across the state. We do a lot of work with other issues around poverty, so that's a tenet of our work. We have the Esperanza Center in Baltimore City. They work with our new neighbors in the immigrant community, everything from legal services to medical services to English as a second language classes. And we also work with older Marylanders. So we have senior communities across the state that work with low wage, low income, older adults in Maryland. So we say we like to say we know a little bit about a lot of different things. So we kind of have our hands in many policy arenas in Annapolis. And for us, it's pretty rare when one piece of legislation crosses across all of the different programs that we work on, but paid family and medical leave is absolutely one of those issues. When we talk about it in our various programming, our staff get it because this is an issue that helps our seniors who need caretakers, who help our families when their child needs inpatient care, who help our families who find out they lost their housing because they needed time off to care for a medical condition and they didn't have paid leave. So this really is an issue that crosses across all of our programming. And at Catholic Charities, you can see on the left-hand side, we operate by 4 values. So our values are to love, to serve, to teach, and to work for justice. And because we have that 4th value to work for justice, Catholic Charities has had an advocacy department for almost 50 years now. And so this is very much rooted in the history of the agency as a whole. We want to make sure we're giving people the things they need today to get to tomorrow, but we also want to be working on systemic fixes so that people don't keep coming to us experiencing the same systemic failures that we see day in, day out. And so that's sort of why Catholic Charities of Baltimore is working on this issue, why Regan and I are here today to talk to you all about this, and just sort of the history of our agency in the advocacy arena overall. So for time to care, we know that everyone needs time to care. The United States is pretty abysmal in what it offers to workers by and large. Fewer than 40% of workers have access to paid leave for short-term disabilities. And when we're talking about family leave, needing to take off time to welcome a new child, only 17% of workers have access to paid leave. As Delegate Valderrama said early, a lot of folks talk about FMLA, but that's unpaid leave, and it's only for businesses with 50 or more employees. So most workers in Maryland do not have access to comprehensive paid leave to take time off when they or a loved one need assistance. And I think we can probably all think of times in our lives when something unexpected came up. You may not be able to predict when you're going to need to take time off for your own medical condition or the medical condition of a loved one, when you might be welcoming a new child into a household, or if a family member gets a letter saying they're going to be deployed. Those things are not always predictable. And so we need to have comprehensive paid family medical leave in our state for just the things that happen, because we're humans living in a world where things will unexpectedly come up, and we shouldn't have to make impossible decisions about which bill to not pay in order to be able to take care of ourselves or our family. We've been working on paid family and medical leave for a few years now in Maryland. In 2016, there was a task force that was created to study the issue and see if it would make sense as a state to have a paid family medical leave program. The task force wrote a report in 2017 and said, yes, we support having paid family medical leave in Maryland. This is good policy and it would help our state. And so from sort of those task force recommendations, we had the first Time to Care Act in 2019. So that was the first year it was introduced, was subsequently introduced in 2020 and 2021. We know generally when it comes to legislation, especially legislation that creates new programming that might cost more money than sort of like a smaller bill, these types of bills take time to pass. So I don't think when we introduced it in 2019, we thought it was going to pass in 2019. But now that we're into the 4th year of this legislation, we really do believe that this is the year now. We've studied this issue. We know this issue. Lawmakers know this issue. They've been hearing about it for 3 years. In the middle of all this, as we know, we've been going through a pandemic. So I think we've only realized even more now how much we need to be able to take time off to care for ourselves and our families. And so we believe, kind of coming through the history of this legislation, that 2020 is the time to pass the Time to Care Act. Our sponsors for our bill, you've already met our wonderful House sponsor, Delegate Valderrama. Our Senate sponsor is Senator Antonio Hayes. For those of you who are in Baltimore City, he's District 40, which is kind of like West Baltimore, a little bit of central downtown. And so that's the district that Senator Hayes represents. So these are our 2 champions for the legislation this year, and will be helping us to courier the legislation through the General Assembly. When we've been talking about paid family leave, there is a coalition called the Time to Care Coalition, and that's the group of organizations, Catholic Charities is a member, that are working to pass this legislation in Maryland. And when we were talking about what does it mean to have a meaningful paid leave policy, because we know there are lots of ideas about what paid family leave means, who should be included. We came up with these 5 tenets that our coalition would only endorse legislation and support legislation that have these 5 tenets as a part of it. So the first is it has to be cost effective for workers, employers, and the government. We can't have the cost of this program fall disproportionately onto workers. We also don't want it to fall disproportionately onto the employers and government. So we need to make sure it's a balanced approach that makes it affordable for everyone who's connected to the program. We also want to make sure it covers all working people and applies equally to everyone. So we don't want legislation that leaves out folks who work at small businesses. We don't want legislation who leaves out workers who are part-time. We want to make sure that it covers everyone who's working and applies equally to everybody, regardless of if they're in a super large business or a smaller business. We want to make sure this is something all working Marylanders can access. We want to make sure our definitions for what you can use leave for include all the well-established reasons people need leave. So for instance, this is not solely a paid family leave bill that just covers maternity and paternity leave. This is also a medical leave bill. So it covers those crises that come up like cancer or an accident. So it covers both family and medical leave and covers comprehensive components of both those types of leave. We also want to make sure it has at least 12 weeks of leave and replaces a substantial amount of wages. And we want that wage replacement to be progressive. So if you're working right around the poverty line, if you're making minimum wage, you would get 90% of your wages replaced. Where if you're making six figures, you're not going to get 90% of your wages replaced. Because we know in order for someone to truly use leave, if you're making $15 an hour and you only get 50% of your wages out of this pool, you're likely not going to be able to afford your basic necessities on 50% of the minimum wage. And so the closer you are to minimum wage, the higher percentage of your wages you receive. And then it taps out at $1,000 per week for high wage earners in the state. We also know that we have to be really important about protecting workers who use the leave. So if you were to use the leave and then lose your job, you don't truly have leave. So job protection is a huge component in the bill so that folks who have been paying into this system and have earned this leave can take it without worrying about their job being gone when they come back. So given that those are our tenets, the legislation we're hoping to move through this year is HB 8 and SB 275. This is the branded Time to Care Act of 2022, which has all of those components in it. It does establish a family and medical leave insurance program in Maryland. Employees can take up to 12 weeks of paid time off. They can use that to welcome a new child, be that adoption or fostering or through birth. They can use it to take care of their own serious medical condition or a family member's serious medical condition. They can also use it if someone in their household is either getting ready for deployment or is returning from deployment and needs assistance with that reentry process. The program provides wage replacement as little as $50 a week, up to $1,000 per week. And as I mentioned, that's based on the wages of the person and what they've been paying into the pool. The wage replacement benefits are drawn from a pool that both employees and employers contribute to. So the way the legislation is written, 50% of the costs employees pay out of their paychecks, and then 50% the employers pay out of their payroll. For the average Maryland worker, based on the average wage in the state, and Regan can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was around $7 that would be split between employer and employees. So the average person would see about $350-ish taken out of their paycheck each week to pay for the program. And that's the average state wage, so not someone making minimum wage. The estimate is, if you like super technical numbers, this is probably about 0.67 to 0.71% of payroll for a business. And again, that's split then between employers and employees. And contributions are mandatory, so everyone would contribute to the pool, and you would get your replacement based on the wages that you make. So that's sort of just like the very basics of the bill, which again, we can answer any questions after the presentation. To be eligible for paid family leave, as I mentioned, it's you're caring for a newborn child, birth or adoption, medical condition yourself or your families, or preparing for deployment. There is sometimes some confusion around paid sick days, which we also fought and passed a couple of years ago, and paid family leave. So just wanted to denote that paid sick leave is just short-term leave for emergent situations. So you had a migraine that day, or your child threw up in the car on the way to school, and you just need a day or two in order to take care of that, go see a doctor. So that's sort of what paid sick days are for. That is something in our state that is employer administered, and is something that is employer funded. And in that case, businesses with 15 or fewer employees They don't have to pay for the sick days, but you can't fire a person for taking sick leave. Paid family leave is for those much bigger medical expenses. So serious medical conditions where you would likely need weeks at a time off. It can be used intermittently. So if you were, for instance, undergoing chemo and every Tuesday and Thursday you need it off in the afternoons for chemo, you can use it intermittently, but it's for long-term illnesses where you will likely need chunks of time off, not simply a couple days to recover in bed. As mentioned, this is a cost that's split between employees and employers, and a big component of this is it's state administered. So there would be a program or a department in the Department of Labor that's going to be created, who would administer this program, accept the application, similar to how FMLA works on a federal level if you've ever had to do FMLA, and that would be the process for accessing this leave. The reason that this is so important, this legislation, is that we have heard time and time again, and we'll hear very shortly, about individuals who have had to make impossible choices about their job or their family when crises arise. And if we have this, we wouldn't have to do that anymore. We know this policy is good for older adults who have caretaking needs. This is especially good policy for women who often disproportionately have to leave the workforce when family issues arise. We've seen from other countries that this can lower infant mortality and lower maternal mortality, as well as make a real reduction in racial and ethnic disparities when it comes to health. And we believe that this is a bill that's good for business, it's good for our economy, and it's good for our state. We also know by polling that Marylanders overwhelmingly support this legislation. 88% of Marylanders polled say they want paid family medical leave. And this has held constant for the past several years. We've done this polling year after year. The numbers really haven't changed. And it also goes across party lines that all Marylanders really want access to this type of policy in our state. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen so that I can see everyone's lovely faces and names, and we can answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you, Lisa. So the floor is open. We have time for a couple of questions before moving on to the next part of our program. Anything about the details of the law that you'd like cleared up? Feel free to, we have a raised hand, Brother Ryan Roberts.
Yeah, how long after beginning a new job with an employer does this become effective?
Can I put that question to you, Regan?
Yeah, sure. You have to have worked 680 hours in the previous year for it to become effective, and it is not tied to your employer. It's just tied to working for 680 hours the previous year.
Now, Reagan or Lisa, a system like this has been implemented in several other states. Is that not correct?
9 states in the District of Columbia. And I don't know them off the top of my head. California, Washington, Oregon, Connecticut. I see Terry and Lisa thinking.
New Jersey, Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Minnesota, I think.
Okay, we have a question from Marge Trinkle.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I worked as a speech and language pathologist in Baltimore City, and one of my students, she was working as a nurse's aide, was pregnant, and her mom had a number of serious health issues. Her brother was murdered, and her mom subsequently, went into depression as well as having issues because she had serious kidney issues. Would this have covered her, the young woman that was working as a nurse's aide? I'm assuming yes.
Yeah, if her mother's condition, it sounds like would fit the definition of a serious health condition. So it likely would have covered her to take time to care with her mother. Our bill does not include bereavement time, but it would cover the serious health condition.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no more questions at this time, I will move us on to our next speaker and would invite Maggie Schultz, a school-based therapist with Catholic Charities, to take the floor and tell us a little bit about what it looks like on the ground.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for letting me speak today. I'm usually used to talking to one person at a time as a therapist, so bear with me if I seem a little nervous. I've been a therapist with Catholic Charities for almost 6 years, and I work in city schools, so I work a lot with families. And as we've been talking about all night, if you know anyone or love anyone who is taking care of a new child recently, you're probably at least a little familiar with FMLA. Unfortunately, a lot of the families that I work with don't qualify for FMLA in its current form due to a variety of reasons. Most often it's because they haven't been able to be at the job long enough to qualify because they've had serious health conditions or needed to take care of a family member with a serious health condition. But for those that do qualify, the decision to take time off to care for a family member is usually actually a decision to go without a paycheck for 12 weeks, which isn't really a decision at all. The current system just falls short in taking care of the families that I work with. The benefits aren't accessible to all families, and many families are forced to choose between making money to sustain themselves, keep a roof over their head, pay the electric bill, or taking leave to care for their family members. And then I think a lot about what happens to the children when their parent is forced to go back to work. For very small newborns, I know as a mom, it can be really, really hard to find childcare for an infant, and it's prohibitively expensive. Many of the families I work with don't have a choice but to stay home without a paycheck or leave their babies with untrained, sometimes unreliable friends or family members. And friends and family taking care of your newborn can work out so wonderfully, but it can also end tragically sometimes. And that's, FMLA is supposed to give caregivers a choice to stay home and care for their loved ones. But what I've seen is that choice is often dependent on finances and often a privilege and not a right. Folks have to return to work in order to keep the lights on, but in doing so can put their dependent family members at risk. And families deserve the right to use FMLA, but they're not able to without a paycheck. They can't take advantage of that program. One thing I've seen quite a bit is families that need to attend to their children's mental health needs, but aren't able to miss work because they can't go without the paycheck for that day, or they can't cut down on their hours because they need the money. I've seen families with hospitalized children who've had to miss visits because they couldn't go without a paycheck. And I often wonder what would happen if they had been able to take paid leave to support their children through crisis, hospitalization, and returning home. I mean, that ability to participate in that family could be life-altering. It could be the difference between that child remaining stable or having to return to the hospital at a later date. Really, the way that I see it as a clinician is that paid FMLA is ultimately a preventative measure. By supporting the families from the start, it takes so much stress off of other systems, and the outcomes of families are so vastly improved that their need for future support actually decreases. I always joke that the main goal of a social worker is to put ourselves out of business by making it so no one needs us anymore. And I think paid FMLA would be a really good step in that direction. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Maggie. I appreciate your contribution here today and helping us focus on the real stories behind this issue. Next up, I would like to mention that a big part of the Time to Care Act coalition, alongside Catholic organizations and community groups, is organized labor. And I would like to introduce a member of the Maryland Catholic Labor Network, Terry Kavanaugh, to talk a little bit about why labor has been so proactive in pushing for paid family leave in Maryland.
Clinton, thank you. Clayton, thank you. I'm Terry Kavanaugh with St. Ignatius of Baltimore Justice and Peace Committee, and my day job is with the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, the Maryland and DC State Council. Some may ask, like, well, don't unions get this in their contracts? Why are they doing it this way? This benefits everybody, not just union members. And I would compare it to, on a broad scale, something like Social Security, which, you know, unions have supported since 1935, because, you know, even though many unions negotiate pensions, that this was a broad social safety, part of a broad social safety net. The same thing in Maryland with fighting for the minimum wage, the Fight for 15 that passed a few years ago, or the sick leave law that we passed working in coalition. So it's really to set labor standards. And there's another piece to it, that this is an issue that's so broad and so expensive that a lot of unions who may have attempted to negotiate it at the bargaining table have not been able to do it, either because they didn't have the leverage to accomplish it. The cost was too great compared to, say, something of a general wage increase. For all of that, we think that is a great way to approach an issue that where hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of Marylanders are in need. Of course, many of us don't know we need it until we need it. And then if it's not there, then, you know, you can't, it's like getting insurance for your house after it burned down. And I just want to thank so many people who've worked on this over the years and have built a coalition on this and done a lot of outreach to, I don't know if any of us are here that have been here from day one, maybe one or two, but it's all because someone approached us and talked to us about it, reached out. I mean, that's what organizing is all about, right? Is reaching out to people who we have common values with, and this is legislation that reflects those common values. I know with my parish, St. Ignatius, we endorsed the bill last year, but we need to be much more active on it. So I think we're going to have, I think the next piece of this, if I'm not taking away from somebody else's thunder, I think we're going to talk about, you know, so how do we go from here to passing a bill? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. I want to once more open the floor in case there are any questions for Maggie or for Terry or for our previous speakers. Anything that's occurred to you since the program began. Just raise your hand if you have anything to ask about. Seeing no questions, I would like to finally introduce Reagan Vaughn of Catholic Charities to tell you a little bit about what you can do to secure paid family leave in Maryland.
Thanks, Clayton. I am going to share my screen just to give you a few ideas on next steps and action items that can be taken. We're going to start with some low-hanging fruit. We are active on social media. Our Twitter handle is @TimeToCareMaryland. You can also find the coalition on Facebook. And Annapolis right now is virtual. The Senate's going to start doing some in-person things. So we are really trying to have a strong presence on social media. So for those of you that are active on social media, if you can help amplify the stories we're putting out, interact with us on social media, follow us on social media, share it with your friends, that really helps us to show the legislature that there's people behind us. And we want to create echo chambers for them. We want them to log on to their Twitter feed and see that everyone's talking about time to care. So that is the first thing we can ask that you can do. The second is to join the Time to Care mailing list. The coalition has about Lisa put we're on Instagram too. Join our mailing list. We have about 900 members right now. We would love to get above 1,000 in the next couple weeks. If you are on the mailing list, you get updates on the bill. Action alerts will be sent to you, and every other week, Lisa and one of our colleagues from Jews United for Justice host a coalition meeting that anyone can come to get an update on the bill, to find out what actions we need taken in the near term, and to find out about upcoming events. So if you want to stay informed and get that information, visit the website. I think it's on the Take Action page. You can sign up to get that information. The next one is to contact your legislators. Let them know you care about this issue. If you have a relationship with them, I always recommend a personal call or email. If you bump into them in the liquor store this weekend and you see them, make sure you tell them you support about time to care. But if you don't have that relationship or you're not comfortable doing that, Lisa is going to drop a link in the chat where we have pre-written an email that you can send your legislator, and you can use our Action Network to get those emails out, and it has suggested language that you can use. The next one is we are hosting a rally in Annapolis. We are excited to start going back down to Annapolis. It will be on President's Day, February 21st at 7 p.m. We're calling it Don't Leave Families in the Dark. It promises to be an entertaining evening. We think we're going to have some musicians, spoken word, but then also to talk about the issues and make sure that the members of the House and Senate know that we're out there, we're pushing this bill, we want it passed this year. So we are trying to get as many people there as possible. So if you yourself can commit to come, I think Lisa's putting the registration link in the chat now, and we'll share these all afterwards via email. We'd love to have you there. If this is something you can share with your parish, your colleagues, your neighbors, anyone you want to share it with, we would appreciate getting the word out. This is also getting pushed out on all of our social media, so there'll be links there and updates as we get closer to the event. And then the final thing is just recruiting others. We are particularly looking for small businesses who want this benefit and recognize what the benefit would bring to them, so that they can better compete with larger, more resourced organizations. So if you are a business owner, you know someone who owns a small business and they might be interested in signing up, there is a place on the website where you can do it, or you can email either Lisa or I, and we'll connect you with our business outreach folks. But the more people talking about this and the more people supporting it, the more legislators are going to listen to us. We are really upping the organizing game this year and trying to make the voices that will be affected by this legislation heard. Because there is a lot going on in Annapolis. We're competing against about 2,000 other bills. And we want them to know that time to care is the top priority for a lot of people, so we don't get lost in line with those other bills. I'm going to stop sharing. I just want to mention that Delegate Valderrama did talk about submitting testimony at the hearings. We welcome testimony. The deadline to sign up to submit written testimony for the Senate is actually tomorrow by 3 o'clock. It's being heard in finance on Thursday. So the testimony would be due then. And I believe there's a testimony template on the Time to Care website, which has the information there. And the House hearing is on Tuesday, the 15th. And that testimony will be due on Friday by 3 o'clock. The legislators having all testimonies submitted electronically on their website this year, and it has to be in 2 business days before the hearing date. And I know that was a lot of different action items. Would love questions. If there are ideas we didn't think about that you think you could do, we would love to hear that as well.
All right, thank you, Reagan. So that invitation to the floor, if anyone has additional ideas of actions they can take or the questions about the actions that Reagan just presented, go ahead and raise your hand. Terry.
Yeah, I'll try and get things started here. I know, you know, we need the support of every legislator, the majority on both committees, and probably most likely a super majorities in the House and Senate. Some of you may be in areas that are particularly key, whether it's, for example, Western Baltimore County, Howard County, where you have a legislator, whether it's Senator Kelly, who's the chair of the Finance Committee, Adrian Jones, the Speaker of the House, Katie Fry Hester, who's a swing vote on an issue like this, or over on the northeast part of Baltimore County, Kathy Klingenmeyer. Those are, every legislator, as I said, is important, but some of those especially need to hear from us that it's an important issue to them, to people in their district. So if you're in or near one of those districts, you count for more than double.
Thank you, Terry. I also want to invite all our parish representatives who are here today, several of you from your local social ministry committee or social justice committee, to bring this issue back to your parishes and talk to your friends and neighbors there and colleagues. Make sure they're aware that time to care, paid family leave is on the docket, and the Maryland Catholic Church is behind it because we believe in families. Any other comments? Thoughts?
I am going to drop one more link in the chat. As Regan mentioned, we do have coalition meetings every other week during session to talk about like what we need this week and where to really push and use momentum. And we do have a registration page for those. So if you would like to attend our coalition meetings, they are, as Regan mentioned, Wednesdays at 4 every other week. I just dropped in the chat the sign up for our next one, which will be February 16th, which will be just right after we've had our House and Senate hearings. So we'll probably have a lot of good idea about the next things we need to do, and it'll take place just before our rally on the 21st. So that'll be a really important meeting. If you're free and if you're able, we would love to see you at our coalition meeting.
All right. We have a question from Marge Trinkle asking do we have any kind of a flyer that can be used to share with others?
For the rally march, can I just clarify?
No, I'm just thinking that sometimes we'll have parishioners that are leaving church or whatever, and the pastor will say, you know, you can give something to them in the parking lot or whatever if they're interested. And, you know, as they're going by, lots of times they're like, you know, I'll take it home and read it. So let me do that and then I can take action. Don't have time right now to ask a lot of questions, but give me some more information. I need more.
In our follow-up email, we will attach some resources that you could use for that purpose.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, great. With that, I just want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to attend this and learn about this issue. It's important as citizens that we get involved in what goes on in Annapolis. And we appreciate you being part of it today. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.